What I mean that is I was
All right, can you guys hear okay?
No.
No? No? What? Just gonna have to get louder.
So we can just whisper amongst ourselves and you guys
Yeah. Somebody else can do it.
Talk amongst yourselves like a good topic.
Can we close the
Could we get
doors?
some volunteers to close the doors for us?
Done and you done.
That helps a lot.
Alright, come on. We can kind of start by introducing.
Hi, I'm Frank Paur. I'm a producer of animation, most notably Marvel and Disney from Gargoyles.
These are professional on the panel. My name is Amanda Lonsdorf, and I studied literature and folklore, and big time fan of Studio Ghibli in general, as a fan and as
I'm Dorianne McCreary, Dory or Do when I saw my names and McCreary. I am a teacher and a costumer artist, and I'm just a huge Ghibli fan, so I kind of invited somebody from the fan standpoint with my opinion.
Okay, my name is Tex Thompson. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? All right. And I am just like phenomenally excited to be here because not only am I in a room full of amazingly tasteful, classy, sophisticated people with astonishingly good taste in anime, but my first book is coming out later this month. It is called One Night in Sixes, and it is the first book in an epic fantasy western series. So a little bit of Firefly and a little bit of Dark Tower. But actually, this book was inspired by Spirited Away. I saw that movie and I just loved it to pieces. And it doesn't look like it, but there's a lot of that in there. And I'm so excited to be on this panel, and I think we're going to have a great discussion. So who wants to kick off? Okay.
Ghibli or Ghibli?
Oh, I was wondering that same thing. So I watched a couple video blogs, which I just texted my husband to tell me the name of this girl because she was really insightful and had a lot of good knowledge. I can't remember her name, so I'll find it out. But they were talking about, it's interesting. The actual word is Ghibli, which comes from Italian planes during World War II. But Miyazaki, as you can probably tell by the movies, is a huge fan of flight. And the word actually means, the word that the plane was named after, I have my notes. Oh, come on, you're just
Googling what we're saying.
I'm not kidding. And I also made a blog about all my stuff that I found that I thought was interesting, so I can give you guys my blog too, so you can look at all my stuff. Okay, so it is Hot Wind Blowing Through the Sahara Desert. That's what the actual word comes from, Ghibli. But Miyazaki, he likes the word, he loves planes, but he pronounces it Ghibli. So technically the word is Ghibli, but Miyazaki pronounces it Ghibli. So I feel like if somebody takes the word and makes it their own and turns it into their studio or uses it for their band or whatever it is, if they pronounce it a different way, I'm going with how they pronounce it when you talk about the studio. So if you're talking about the plane or the word that means hot wind blowing across the Sahara Desert, it's Ghibli. If you're talking about the studio, it's your choice, but I call it Ghibli just because he does. So, you know. Ooh, isn't that interesting? Yay, I know stuff. I actually read like the documents I watched to blogs, so you can find stuff about it. It's good. So after we talked about that, do you guys want to talk about, I know the panel specifically talked about anime after Miyazaki. Do you guys want to talk more about Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli specifically? Or would you like to lean more toward the new things coming and opinions on whether or not we're excited or sad, and obviously we're sad. You take both things. You want to start? Okay. Let's start with you talking about.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Can we go quick down the panel and name your favorite Ghibli film?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, well for me it was definitely Spirited Away. That's something I could watch over and over and I would never get tired of it.
My favorite, I've actually seen almost all of the Ghibli / Miyazaki movies. The only ones I haven't seen, I'm pretty sure, are Whisper from the Heart, which I actually have in my hotel room right now, but I haven't had a chance to watch it. I know I really want to see it so bad. And Palm Poco I haven't seen yet, which I really want to see. I know. And I don't know, are there kids in here? Can we talk about the awkwardness in that movie and why it's part of it? No? Tanuki? Because I know why that is in there. Palm Poco, there's the Tanuki raccoon guys.
I'm trying to.
Oh, yeah.
And they have magical body parts.
They're bald.
And I found out that it was a Japanese version of snake oil. It was a cure-all / magical potion that people would sell back in the day, and it has a real rich history in Japanese culture apparently. The snake oil kind of a thing, but it was tanuki scrotum. So yeah, so that's it. I was like, what is happening? Why are they? Yeah, attraction of okay, sorry. So yeah, that was interesting. But okay, but I've seen all the rest. So it's really hard to pick. They're all so good. But Howl's Moving Castle, I don't know what it is. But Howl's Moving Castle, I just love. It just, I could just watch that over and over again all day long. And I love the imagery in that one. I really love the castle itself and all the characters and how they're all, when you think about it, they're all real kind of weak individuals on their own to start with in some ways. They have something that's holding them back. But then when they all come together as a family, and I just love that. I just love that kind of, yeah, it's so neat. I love that one. But now I just watched Wind Rises, which we found online somewhere to watch for free. It was really hard to watch because you had to watch like the whole thing. It was really hard to couldn't pause or anything. But it was on there, and it wasn't like I was stealing it either. I was just able to watch it. I don't remember to look and see where it was. But I was, oh my gosh, that is one of the best anything that I've ever seen in my entire life.
Is that new? I haven't heard of that
It's
one.
brand new. It was out in theaters a month ago.
It's fairly autobiographical.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a non-fantasy film.
Japanese.
It's about the person who built Japanese Zero in World War II. And we talked about, the Studio Ghibli, the Italian airplane. A big figure in that is an Italian airplane inventor.
Yeah.
So it's very personal to him about this. And it's a very interesting film because it has to side dance around a lot of the World War II stuff. And it's a very interesting movie because it's kind of a love story. It's a love story with planes. I mean, it's a very tragic story in many ways. Very sad movie, but also one that has a lot of, like all Miyazaki's films, they always have much hope within them. So it's kind of bittersweet, but at the same time, it's a very positive film.
Yeah, it's definitely a drama, and have tissues ready because it's.
I would wait to show it to your children that they're.
And
Yeah,
if you love
it's a
airplanes,
drama.
you'll love it because Miyazaki has always been the master of flight in all of his films.
And the love aspect of that movie's interesting because it's the first one where there's actually an adult romance happening in the movie. People actually kiss in this movie. Think about it. Does anybody ever kiss in a Miyazaki movie otherwise?
Howl's Moving Castle.
Howl's Moving Castle.
Very
Yes, yeah, but that's it, right? I mean, yeah. So it's a very adult romance that's happening in so it's, yeah. I mean, I think a kid could watch it, but it's definitely more of an adult concept, a drama, and
But still somehow magical.
yeah, it's still,
Yeah.
even though it's.
We can talk about that.
Yeah.
That's when you're cool. Yeah, that is actually one of my, it's beginning to be one of my favorites. But I think my ultimate favorite would be Princess Mononoke. The beautiful balance between all the ideas of humanity and nature and industrialization and environmentalism. It's just really well balanced, and nobody's really. And I like that, especially coming from a fairy tale standpoint. You get this good evil dichotomy, and this is very, everybody has a reason for what they're doing. But I have to say, even though that's my favorite movie, I don't watch it that much because I have to be in the right mood to watch that movie. If I'm having a rough day, especially when I was in college, going, oh God, what am I gonna do with my life? Kiki's Delivery Service and This Was the Heart. Those were like, I'm overwhelmed and I'm going to play this and clean the house. So those are kind of my secondaries because they're something I will continually rewatch if I'm having some emotional things going on.
You know, I'm impartial, I love them all equally. I would say if I had to be impartial, it would be Spirited Away, because when I first saw it, it was on its opening day and I was in Tokyo, and nothing to do. So, watching it there in the big theater and everything with the people was odd. It's just, you know, watching it, if you ever have a chance to see a Miyazaki film on the big screen, see it on the big screen. It's meant to be seen on the big screen because it is so loaded with detail, and they are experiences.
I did see someone had their hand up raised while we were talking before.
I've seen
Go ahead.
Wind Rises. I have a friend who ordered the Blu-ray from Japan and it came with English subtitles on it.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow,
So
good
I
to
have
know.
seen the Blu-ray.
Excellent.
Something that my birthday was.
I have a blog too. My blog is, if you go to my website, thebeardedpixie.com, I have links to a lot of stuff, but there are a couple of the ones you can see on free online right now. I think either Hulu or Vio or something, there's two of them, and they have some of them on there for free. One of them is Lupin the Third, Castle of Cagliostro. That one's on there, and that one's one of the older ones. It's not really Studio Ghibli, but it's in Miyazaki, and yeah. So that's a neat one to see, yeah, because you can see the influence, like you can see all of the aerial views and all of it's very much, you know, the predecessor to a lot of the Ghibli work. So that's a neat one to see, and it's free, it's free. And then The Cat Returns is also online somewhere for free. So some of these you can go and watch easily, you know, right now even.
I was surprised that there's actually a couple versions of Lupin the Third going out. I had a old dub on VHS tape, and I thought the dub job was actually very good.
Okay.
And then I got it on DVD, and I found it was a completely different dub job that actually changed some of the lines. It's like one of those, like, make some of the classic things that make people hate dubbing.
Well, here's the question, what do you prefer, dubbing or original?
I personally like original, but I understand the people who like dubbing. I'm mainly just because I got into anime in the early days where any dub job was a horrible dub job. And so it's just sort of like a knee-jerk reaction for me. But, you know, I've seen things that are actually quite good, and some of them that you can add something, like, say, the Trigoon dub. I think, and even as a snob, I think that that's actually quite a good voice acting job. There's some good ones. And, you know, I know people don't want to, like, concentrate on the, like, I know my girlfriend doesn't want to concentrate on the subtitles. It just, you know, it takes away from the experience for her. You know, I understand that, but just, you know, you get some, like, Nausicaa Valley of the Wind. That was one of those things where the dubbing people, just because they thought they couldn't do certain things, took out certain important scenes for the plot. And actually changed several things about the movie. So, like, that Miyazaki, like Nausicaa Valley of the Wind, was actually materially changed for the dub. One can argue for the words.
Well, Miyazaki, they took about a half hour of that out of the film. You know, it was one of Miyazaki's earlier films as well. Very environmentalist in its views, and a beautiful film. Editing purposes, they condensed it.
Well, I do have to comment, Spirited Away is also my favorite, and I purchased it in a sub version before it was released by Disney, and I was blown away by what a beautiful job Disney did of dubbing that. The voices, I thought everything was just perfect. I was prepared to be disappointed.
And the reason for that is John Lasseter is a huge Miyazaki fan, and Disney has a contract to release Studio Ghibli films, Miyazaki particularly in the United States, and so he's always makes very certain that he attended to everything. You know, it's not a hatchet job when these films are recorded in English.
Yeah, which makes it so much easier to watch them dubbed when you have, you know, actually they respect and they're trying to keep it very pure to what the actual story was. I mean, you know, it's never going to be perfect, but that makes it a lot easier. I'm a very visual person. I think it's also depending on if you're a visual person or if your brain works really good. Mine doesn't. I have ADHD, so it's like there's pretty stuff. I can't read this. I don't know what's happening. So like I'm distracted by all the shiny things. So I appreciate the dubs, and I feel like they're such beautiful movies. I'm gonna watch them over and over and over. So then I watch them subtitled, and then I watch the dub. sometimes just throw it on without the subtitles just to listen to it, So that's what's kind of, I think it's so fun, because then you get a whole new experience, you watch it a different way. That's fun.
I think I have 1, 2, 3, and then 4. That's what I've got.
Going back to the dubs, I mean, like, it's different for which version you get to. Because, like, My Neighbor Totoro and Castle in the Sky have had their dubs released before Disney did it, and the dialogue is completely different.
Yeah, some things were changed in some of the re-releases, and that does make it hard when you're like, wait, I remember this happening instead of this.
Or they Americanized something that was, because he draws a lot from Japanese culture, and then, if they would do an early dub, they'd maybe Americanize it so that an American viewer might be able to understand it better, but then you lose that culture.
Well, it's all, and also, it's interesting you do the dubs, because you're dealing with Japanese, and most of the Japanese films, they do not have lip sync. They move them out, there is no lip sync, and adapting the language into American to mean the same thing is very difficult to do, because even though there's no lip sync, you do have a lot of lip flap. And so the challenge of that is you have a lot of vowels and consonants that not necessarily we would speak if you listen to a lot of anime dubs. Yes, do you know what I mean? Yes, I do. I know exactly what you mean. You have these kind of weird phrases that don't make a whole lot of sense, but they have to do something because they have a lot of lip flap going on. So they try their best to do a lot of these things, but Disney's, again, they've taken a lot more time and effort and, to bring out the original meaning of the script and the writing.
So I think that's an expectation that we have in the U.S. here, is that if the mouth is moving, we should hear things that sound like this is happening. But that,
that's why I've always preferred the Japanese. The Miyazaki films, to me, it's like he's such a Western storyteller in the way he tells the story, and he's so visual. And in my own job, my attitude is when I direct a film is, can you understand it if there's no dialogue? Can you tell it visually? And Miyazaki is a master of that. So some things may be a little strange here and there, but for the most part, the direction of the story, you pretty much know what's going on in his films, even if you can't understand the language. And the Japanese recordings, there's so much more emotion, and again, they understand the meaning of what's going on, and so they're able to do a better job at emoting the characters.
and there was a gentleman in the back.
I was just going to say that it's sort of fun to read Neil Gaiman's blog, because he's the one who did the dub version for Princess Mononoke, and actually struggling. There's a scene where he's drinking some soup, and in Japanese it's like, this tastes like water, which is supposed to be a real insult, but he translated it to English, not so much of an insult, so he really started struggling and came up with it tastes like donkey piss. So,
Yeah, trying to, again, taking this is a cultural thing that one person would understand in one culture, and then trying to translate it. So that's why sometimes you get very different types for your subtitles and your dubs, that you're like, wait, why did they change that? But sometimes there's a cultural reason there going, you want to get the same impact. You can't use the same words, though.
My favorite film is Totoro, and I think part of that has to do with the first time I saw it, I was in Japan and it was Japanese, and my host family was like, "Oh, you've never seen this?" and like showed it to me, and I really enjoyed it, even though I didn't totally understand exactly what was going on. And it's still my favorite film, but I watched recently, there was a DVD that came out in like 1997, produced by Fox, and like dub only. Like there's no option to watch it in Japanese with subtitles. So I was kind of bummed. And I put it on, and like I love May, but she was so abrasive in like her precociousness, and like the soot spirits, they like changed the name of them, and I just felt like there were so many cultural things that weren't present. So I guess I'm just kind of curious, and we've touched upon this already, but do you think that Miyazaki films can be enjoyed in a good dub, or are they best enjoyed in Japanese with subtitles?
That's That's really your preference.
Yeah.
I mean, my preference is, I enjoy the Japanese because even though I may not completely understand it all, I understand the emotive expression that the actors are able to do. Oftentimes, you know, this is so much Miyazaki films anymore, but it's standard Japanese anime, you have basically 4 or 5 actors doing the whole spectrum, and I kind of get tired of listening to them because they don't get it. They come in for an afternoon and they do their job and they leave.
And then even in other
You know,
movies
I
too,
mean-
you're watching one movie after it's the same.
Well, yeah, you know, it's God bless them, they try, but it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to do, even for an actor to get in there and try to match that. You know, flapping lips and trying to get that acting and expression in there.
Yeah, and again, I think we all kind of agree, it's kind of personal preference. Some people, if you're more visual, it's nice to have a nice dub, so you have to pay attention.
Yeah.
But from the art standpoint, I mean, I think every once in a while people should just watch it in Japanese and just zone out and just appreciate this beautiful piece of artwork too. It's fun to be able to do both. We're lucky.
I'd just like to bring out again, there are certain, I don't think this happened in the Miyazaki movie, and I think definitely the Miyazaki dubs, you know, there are, you know, again, good dubs and bad dubs, but especially the removal of evidence of Japanese culture. I mean, some directors of the dubs, you know, are really extreme about that. I watched this one.
Americanizing it.
Yeah, I watched this
Crazy.
one anime series which made a bizarre choice. They replaced every reference to Japanese culture with really filthy sexual humor. Like one things about him, oh, he wouldn't be able to fold a paper crane, turned into a joke about pubic hair, and they just threw out the whole thing. They just replaced it with
That's a bad
sexual
criticism
humor.
of individuals, yeah.
I think I saw a hand over here before, and then we can, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so my favorite one is Castle in the Sky. For the sub-dub thing, I think, especially with Disney being the vehicle for distribution in the United States, every now and then they do kind of throw their weight about and get in someone that you don't always think of as a voice actor, and it turns out absolutely amazing, like Patrick Stewart as Lord Yuka, or my absolute favorite, Gillian Anderson in Princess Mononoke.
Yeah.
That was absolutely amazing. But again, with the Disney, like here in the US, Disney is kind of the go-to studio for fairy tales. And
Especially within popular culture.
Yeah.
It's just easily accessible, yeah.
yeah, and Miyazaki is like the modern Japanese fairy tales. And what do you guys think of Disney being the ones that are distributing these different sort of fairy tales to this?
See, I think it's kind of interesting. I mean, I know John Lasseter is a huge fan, but I also think he's a businessman and he realized these are gorgeous and amazing and we better snatch them up before somebody else does.
Don't call him, let him hear you call him a businessman.
I know. But you know what I mean. You know, I mean, these people are very, you know, business oriented as well. So I think it's one of those things too.
But didn't Disney buy up the rights initially and then refuse to release them for a long time so they wouldn't compete with American things? I thought Disney's acquisition of Miyazaki films was to retard Japanese anime in the US.
The thing is, Miyazaki's films are huge overseas, not so much here. You know, so really taking a bite out of Disney's, you know, wallet, it's nothing here. You know, the fan set here is, again, it's very much ascribed to something being kitty fair.
But wasn't that the point, that Disney did that early on so that it wouldn't become big? Like Disney has been actively suppressing
I think there's
anime in the
something-
US for years, and maybe because they didn't, now they're releasing it, now because they realize it's not a big thing, it won't be a big market.
But
So
you
now they're
figure
not
it's
less
a team
afraid
of
of
people,
it,
so
less
maybe
afraid.
someone in that group is pushing for that, but you know, I mean, it's
Well,
always
also,
a team of people, so.
again, I've been, in my own shows, you have this certain American prejudice about cartoons as being something that's only for kids. And it's kind of frustrating because when I first became involved in animation, one of the films that, my first anime film really was Castle of Cagliostro. I saw that, and that, you know, I fell in love with it, and I've been a Miyazaki fan ever since. But to have that freedom to do that, like American television, things like that, I don't have that. Very seldom do I have that kind of freedom, because usually it's sponsored by toy companies. Because of that, because adults don't really get into it as much as they did. I think we made some inroad, but for the most part, I still think there is kind of a prejudice, and overseas, they don't have that hang-up. It's like a show is a show. If it's a good show, they love it, whether it's live action, whether it's animation. More times it's in animation. I've seen Japanese shows, live action, that are more cartoonish than,
And
you
there's
know,
so many more
than the
genres
animation.
and animated than there are when you think about it. Kids shows, it's more few and far between. I mean, but nowadays, I think things have progressed a lot. We didn't have, you can think nowadays with American cartoons, there's a lot more adult American cartoons. But that's only in the past, you know, I mean, I feel like it's becoming more. I mean, we always had them. You look at black and white and you can tell that some of them were for adults. But, you know, it's becoming, I think, a little bit more all the time, but it's still definitely driven by, you know, what's going to be for kids, what's going to be the toys, what's going to be.
It's going to be driven by profit.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I was going to point out, we were talking about The Wind Rises. Some of the other films that have come out of Studio Ghibli, Wind Rises, and From Up on Poppy Hill, and The Tales of Earthsea, have not been produced by Disney. They haven't been brought out by Disney. It's been other companies, but they're still from the same studio. It's going, well, this isn't going to really fit the market that we're looking at, even if they're still good films. So it's just that difference of not everything is being produced by Disney. It's, again, it's that business side of it. Of they're looking at this is the age range we're looking at, and cartoons we're looking at.
They're going to
for just
invest
this age.
in what makes sense for their kids.
So earlier you were talking about how Miyazaki is a very Western storyteller, and obviously he's been very influential both on Western animators. You know, kind of coming from my generation, a lot of the new stuff that's coming out. But, you know, I haven't, you know, I'll admit I don't watch a ton of anime. And I'm kind of wondering how much his Western style of storytelling has influenced the newer animes that are coming out from younger animators.
Well, you know, another storyteller, I think, was Otomo. You know, I think he was somewhat influenced by Western storytelling. If you look at Akira Memories, I think he's a big fan of Western style storytelling, and I'm sure there are a lot more out there. I watch a lot of anime, but I don't study it per se.
And in a media-driven world anymore, I think there's a lot more access to other cultures. So there's going to be crossover, especially with you know styles of clothing or styles of anime or style, you know, the design behind it, or where it looks like the culture is coming from, things like that. But obviously, you know, if you're going to be from a certain culture, you're going to have a lot of your own cultural influence as well. But because everything is so viral, everything is so media-driven, you're going to have some crossover, I think. Typically, unless somebody's doing a period piece, you know, you see some of Miyazaki's films that are from, like The Wind Rises, that is a period piece. It's going to obviously have more of a Japanese cultural drive. But if he does something, you know, somebody that's more futuristic or whatever, it's going to have more influences of different, you know, things that the actual artist is maybe interested in, or things that they've seen, or that they appreciate in animation.
I've seen a hand going up in here.
Yeah,
Please.
the cultural influences in anime is what drew me to anime, because it was like, you know, where like you can get tired of watching the same stories being told, and then you watch anime and it's like, this is a brand new story I've never heard before. So it was like opening a whole new door to a whole new set of stories.
I felt like that too.
And take it on, and as far as and it's still very much being spread by more word of mouth, fan to fan, rather than big companies.
Yeah.
Because if someone, a friend of yours, is really excited about this thing, and you get really excited about it, and you know.
Well, I love that too. I feel like, you you do, with Western culture and with, our American, we have our certain fairy tales. And if you have, different cultural backgrounds, you'll have your fairy tales that cross over. But, I love the folklore and fairy tales of different cultures, and there's so much rich, storytelling across cultures. But a lot of times people fixate, or you just hear about things that are just your own culture. So seeing these new stories, and a lot of them, when you look into the research a little bit, like the Tanuki thing, you find that they are old folklore, but something that maybe as a Westerner you wouldn't necessarily have seen before, and I love that too. So the culture is one of my favorite parts of movies as well. Even little things, like I love the thing in Spirit or whatever. Ooh, I got cooties on me. There, get it off, and then you go. It's good, or she taps her shoes, just little things like that are just really beautiful insights into a different culture. I love that.
We were, you guys were talking about your favorite Miyazaki movies, but thankfully, one of the parts about so many Miyazaki movies getting out is we get a lot of, Ghibli movies that aren't directed or produced by him. You had talked about Tales from Earthsea, for example. Of those, what would you kind of select and hold up as, this is what I hope we see more of now that Miyazaki is retired for maybe the fourth or fifth time?
I was going to ask what we felt about retirement. My comment was going to be, I don't think he's going to actually retire. I think it's well, I'm not going to be officially on staff, but if I have stuff I want to do, they'll just let me do it. I think that's what's going to happen. When Rise is going, this is something important to me. Okay, if I do it, yeah, okay, I'm just going to do it. That's just the feeling I get.
You're just stop it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, please don't make this beautiful art.
Yeah, an artistic person just doesn't stop. I mean, sometimes people do, but typically you still want to do something.
He's even still making areas for their museum. I was reading on their museum, the Studio Ghibli museum. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to do something with reinventing the Nutcracker, just cause. And I'm like, oh, can I see that? Like, I like just pictures even,
Money?
Yeah.
And we had some hands up, please.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, one thing I think that's really cool about Miyazaki, his style in general, is his little quiet moments that he does. And I've noticed in Western animation, shows pick up on things that he does stylistically, I feel like the show Steven Universe has a really big Miyazaki influence in certain areas of it. And just visually as well. And I was wondering about, I don't watch a huge amount of anime, but are there current animes that you feel are very specifically you can see Miyazaki's influence upon it?
Yeah, or maybe even just something that kind of relates or reminds you of. I know, I have little anime pockets here and there, but something that you mentioned, the quiet moments and kind of deeper, I don't know, I kind of interpret that as something kind of deeper going on, or just beautiful, quiet things happening. If you've ever seen Mushishi, and it's on Netflix, and it's more like a drama, and it has a darker feel and a very quiet feel, but it's actually about a person who, it's the spirit world, and there's these little dust note things. It's very similar, driven from similar folklore and things, culture-wise, I think. And I'm not sure, I haven't actually done any research, I don't know if it's influenced by Miyazaki or if it's just, they're stemming from similar folklore and ideas that way. I think it's probably more of that, but that's another really neat one to look into. If you haven't seen Mushishi, it's just really beautiful.
By the way, season 2 is currently airing.
I know that recently Miyazaki made a statement about modern day anime, where he basically doesn't like it. Mainly, he was chiding the younger filmmakers for basically their lack of having a life. I can't remember the actual quote, but it was basically his films stem from his life's experiences and his love of children and things of that nature that enables him come up with the things that he does. And he feels that a lot of the filmmakers don't have those kinds of life experiences that they can actually understand them. And in order to write or to act something out, you have to really understand your character. And he feels a lot of the characters are hollow, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, his come from more of an inner contemplative
Yeah.
place.
Yeah,
And modern things, a lot of times it's more of a personal, like, who am I dating right now? Who am I, you know, it's more like,
Well,
an introvert, like
well,
looking at yourself and being
we talk about those dramatic pauses. You know, one of my favorite is, you know, My Neighbor Totoro, the bus stop sequence.
Oh, yeah.
That is so full of meaning. It's just so wonderfully crafted, and it can mean 1,000 different things, and all of them good. Considering that they're kind of these big, weird-looking monsters, that's pretty amazing. But Miyazaki does that a lot. He has a lot of those contemplative moments, and he knows where to put them. He's a master at understanding the timing, where to put them, and how to twist your thinking.
And it never feels slow and it never feels boring.
No, it doesn't.
Enthralled. I love
It doesn't.
Well, I think that, you know, like when he wrote that article, right, he was basically talking about, or gave that interview, right, the problem with anime is otaku. And talking about, that was his thing, you know, damn kids, you know. But, you know, like, I think you really do, there was some debate in the forum comments that I read over whether he was referring to filmmakers representing human nature in the way people behave, or whether he was talking about the animation style and representing how they look and how they move, both of which, of course, Miyazaki is amazing at. But I definitely agree that, you know, when you have somebody who just has a judo grip on people and the way that they are and the way that they behave and the way they think and the way they move, they can do anything. You know, like you can have a scene where Kiki's just minding the store and have the confidence to know that your audience will stay with you. And it's when you don't have that we start descending into panty shots and explosions.
Yeah. Well, I feel like too the characters have a very, I mean, somebody was mentioning, I don't know if you said this during it, there's no evil characters. They're more well-rounded individuals, where even if they have traits that aren't admirable, a lot of the characters start out as bratty or self-involved or, you know, not sure of themselves, and they develop into these people. You see a full range of a character development and an actual depth of character, whereas a lot of other anime, these are stereotypes, or they're very strong characters in one way. Like a show that I love is Soul Eater, but each character has a very strong individual character type. And they do develop the characters and they have more depth than some things that you watch, but there's still a very strong, like, this person is the very loud, obnoxious person, and this one is the quiet person, and this one is, you know, so the Miyazaki characters feel more like real people that you actually can relate to, and they have this development, or this depth that they're never really bad, and they have things to work on, but you can relate.
Do we want to get back to the question we had earlier of what of the more recent Studio Ghibli films that we are liking and want to see more of? Like, again, kind of looking at the future of Studio Ghibli. I know we were going to get back to that. But
sure, yeah.
I guess I'll just start off because I brought it up. But I looking at specifically the last few things with Tales of Earthsea and I'm going to put Tales of Earthsea and Up on Poppy Hill kind of together because that's Goro's work. Because I think he might be coming into his own. I would like to see more from him. It's definitely a darker tone, and I think I'm okay with that, but I'd like to see that the elements of, because we get a darker tone in The Wind Rises, but still those runs of enchantment and that relatability to this is a human being in this time and place. And there's a lot of things going on that they're connected to, but looking at those human aspirations and that human relatability as well. And then there's that enchantment of the dreams and the sequences that it goes through. So I'd love to see a little bit more of that through some of Goro's work, because I think that he's going to be doing, I feel like he's going to probably be doing more
in Studio Ghibli. And I don't know about some of the other individuals, but I think he's starting to come into his own. But it's his first couple of films, and for his first couple of films, they're really good.
Really good, yeah.
I mean,
it's like,
I was
yeah, especially
impressed.
being under the shadow of Hayao, you know, it's like, come on. So yeah, I definitely feel like with those, I very much notice the characters aren't as, you don't, like I'd said about the other characters, I don't feel that as much with his characters, but he's still, it's still beautiful, and there's still a lot he can grow. And I have hopes it's just a little better and continue on.
And that Miyazaki's just gonna keep making stuff.
Yeah.
I thought maybe we could talk a little bit more about how Miyazaki films usually have very well-rounded female leads.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up
Like,
too. I'm glad you said that.
West Disney doesn't even acknowledge.
Yeah.
It's interesting. When I usually work, I kind of have my computer and I set it on Hulu, and their anime section. There was a film, is it Nemo? About a little girl, a lion tamer. It's kind of, it's the turn of the century, very dark skin, has kind of this exotic.
Nausicaa?
Nadia?
Nadia.
Okay.
That's it, Nadia. What I found interesting, going, gosh, a lot of this looks really familiar. And a lot of the concepts and development for Nadia were by Hayao Miyazaki. And when you watch that series, you see elements of a lot of his motion picture work beginning in that series. A lot of his designs from Nausicaa, Valley of the Wind, all these things have a lot of his design concepts. And you're talking about the strong female lead. Nadia is I wouldn't say she's a lead, she's not a strong lead, but you see the other elements. You see the witch and her two henchmen, which are almost in all of his movies.
Well, and that's the
So it's like he has a cast of characters and he has a formula that he takes and he reuses, but he does so in very interesting and different ways. But it's very much a signature of his, I think, the strong, and it's always a strong female with a strong boy lead as well. Nadia had the same thing. He didn't direct the episodes, but he did create a lot of elements in that series.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing too. It's like not necessarily saying strong, but saying assertive. I can't remember the girl's name again, like I said, my honey sent it to me, but she does a lot of blogging and she did a whole Miyazaki month. And she commented on there. If you really think about the characters, there are some strong learning characters, but assertive is sometimes a better word for it. I thought that was it that she had said, and I was like, that's a good point because and a lot of times they don't start out strong, but they have this drive or this character of themselves, this personality that they're able to they push themselves, and with the help of their friends and companions and people that they meet along the way, they accomplish something or they help to influence something to happen. So strong may not be the best word, but assertive or
They have agency.
What is it?
They have agency.
Sure. Yeah. This is kind of neat, and that idea of, and I like to see the growth. It's a lot of times there's a growth that happens there, and you're along the journey, which is beautiful.
So I'm sorry. When we're talking about Miyazaki, what happens after Studio Ghibli, and eventually you won't have Miyazaki. But the thing to remember about Studio Ghibli is it originated with him. And it's not just the studio, it's his form of storytelling. So you have all of these people that have worked with him for all of these years learning, it's the Middle Ages, you'd be working, if you're working for a great painter, you'd be, what's the word? Apprentice to it. They're all apprentices to this, and they're learning his craft. And they will take over, he's allowing a lot of them to go in and take over. I'm sure he's looking over a lot of shoulders and things, because you just can't help yourself when you're like that. You do, but eventually they do their own stuff, and they will add to it, and some of them will be maybe even better, and some of them not so much. But he is raising a generation based on his ideas and thoughts.
And from a standpoint of loving was with a passion rather than money making scheme. So I mean, you see that in the art, you hear that in Studio Ghibli apparently has some massage day and incredible. They've been working so hard and they're all punched in.
I was at the studio in 1993, and it was very unique in that in Tokyo, when usually everybody lives outside of Tokyo because Tokyo is so expensive, that they come in and they will sleep under their work tables. They're crazy workers in animation. He created the studio and he has dorms. He actually put dorms in for the artists and things, so they wouldn't have to do that, so they could feel somewhat human while they worked them to death. You know? But he had a lot of innovations in what he thinks about you know, and how you work and working conditions and everything. To him, the artists, you know, you want to treat them special because they're the ones that are creating your dreams, basically. He doesn't do it all. He has to have these other people who do a lot of things for him. And you want them to be as successful as they can, and you have to make working conditions very real. And when he created Studio Ghibli, that was foremost on his mind when he was creating that studio, so that it catered to the needs of the artists inside and things like that. Absolutely.
I had to slightly disagree with the fact that you said there's no, for lack of a better term, evil character in these films. I think the exception was in the Cats of Cagliostro.
The moment count, and there are
That was an
those.
ongoing story.
Also, Laputa, Castle in the Sky. The pirates were good anti-villains. That they were well-rounded, but the guy was the guy that was taking control. The cousin was just straight up evil. But they did have some anti-villains in there with the pirates, who didn't turn out to have good moments.
Lupin was an ongoing story, but the story involving Cagliostro wasn't.
Oh, okay, so I see what you're saying, yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, but I think I like it, while there are maybe some characters that do come up as pretty evil, there's still some reasoning as to why they're evil. They're not just, well, I am evil because, you know, but.
In the Studio Ghibli.
You've never worked for Disney.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, it's not that, but even so, I think it's a better balance than you would see in other similar type storytelling. That usually there's an evil person and there's a good person, and that's just where they fit.
And here's the happy ending.
Exactly. So, but that's a good point too, that there were some characters that were painted fairly negatively.
Yeah, it's not a, you know, it's not.
This guy's arm's gonna go to sleep.
Yeah, right here, Red Ranger.
Do you think that Disney's going to be so willing to import non-Miyazaki movies into the West now that, like, after him? Because
I don't think so. I think they're very picky about what they would put the Disney name on. I think they're only going to put the Disney name on something that's going to be, you know, their morals and something that's family friendly to continue with their genre, and something that they really feel comfortable putting, because they're putting their name on it. They're only going to do that for something that's really exceptional. Otherwise, they're just going to do things.
Well, conceptual in their life, in their ideas. Yeah.
Because it's very.
I unfortunately kind of feel that way too. I think there's still going to be films coming out, and I think they'll still be a big deal, but it will. I don't know if it's going to be through Disney or not.
I think they keep their eyes open all the time. If something really good comes out, they're going to go in there and try to, you know, facilitate it and hopefully, you know, put the Disney name on it because they would like to be a part of that. That's their genre that they would like to continue to be a part of that. But I think it's only going to be just something that they feel fits with what they're going for and is exceptional.
Yeah.
So.
There's one with, well, I think Disney did produce it, but also had a strongish female lead was The Secret World of Ariadne.
Oh, yes.
I loved that.
I love
Like,
that one too.
I ended up not being able to watch it right away, and then when I finally did, it blew me away. And it had that strong female character, and it was from Disney.
I almost dressed as her, but I didn't have time to make that picture in clip.
Well, one of the things I'm excited about is the Tale of Princess Kaguya. Do you know about that yet? That came out last year in Japan. It has won a passel of awards. It's been directed and written by Isao Takahata did Grave of the Fireflies, Coco, My Neighbor the Yamadas. He's been with Studio Ghibli from like the get-go. And this is a film that he's put out, he's directed it, and he's also written it with, you know, like a couple of people on board. We haven't really heard a lot from him in a while, and I think it'll be really interesting to see how much release that gets over here and how much people pay attention to that.
What's it called?
The Tale of Princess Kaguya. Yeah, Kaguya. Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
I keep hearing about it and I'm going, is it here yet? Is it time yet? I'm just waiting because, I mean, with The Wind Rises, I was like, okay, Disney's not doing it. When is it coming out? How far am I going to have to travel to go see it? To try to just get an opportunity to see it. And that's, I think, going to be the biggest challenge. If things aren't picked up by Disney, it's going to be harder to see these movies in theater if they do get a theater release.
We talked about the start of our conflict female characters. Should we talk about other themes? I mean, I know there's some ongoing themes in the movie. There's obviously flying, is kind of across the board. There's also the whole nature or respecting the environment or the spirits kind of element, and some other things we could possibly talk about. Well, there's a question.
Well, there's always the theme that cooperation in the end is always stronger than
working together.
Yeah, than trying to work on your own.
Again, that really human element of I think that's that whole being part of a society, and that's something relatable going, because there are times in our lives as regular human beings where we can't do it by ourselves, and I think that's one of the main elements to Miyazaki that really speaks to a lot of people, is that you can relate to it because you have extraordinary things that happen in your life, whether they're magical or not, but that you need to find strength in yourself and in those people around you.
Whereas we don't get that a lot in Western movies. It's usually just the one hero
Yeah.
manages
That
to
goes off
overcome
on their
all
own
obstacles
at the
somehow.
end. Yeah, and usually goes off on their own at the end. You see that as a theme a lot. Like maybe they have a sidekick, but the sidekick gets hurt or dies or has to wait, and they go to the end by themselves, and then they win. Yay!
One of the things that I really liked was, and you see this in Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away and others, and I'm sure I'm not even thinking of, is morality magic, and the idea that, you know, small acts change things in huge ways. You know, No Face turns into a monster because he's gluttonous. Her parents turn into monsters because they
are also gluttonous.
Yeah, but at the same time, you know, like we might expect in a more traditional story that she becomes enormously powerful, and that's how she defeats the problem. But instead, you have this idea that you can help the stink spirit just by pulling out the garbage. You know, you don't have to have a power level of 9,000.
And just playing with a stench. A lot of people just left because they were like, whoa. And she's like, he needs help. I'm just going to do it. She Hufflepuffed up.
Well, I read an interview with Miyazaki that he said that one of his motivations for creating Spirited Away was he makes a lot of these movies for his granddaughters. And that one in particular, he wanted to teach them the value of hard work, because kids grow up really spoiled and entitled these days. And so you see in Spirited Away that, for example, No Face, he thinks he can just make friends by buying them with money. And so all the characters try to take shortcuts. And Sin in the end is the one that's victorious because she just works without complaining. And Yubaba tells her that's the way this world works, is you have to work and you can't complain about it. And in the end, things will turn out okay.
Which isn't how she is at first. She's coming from a modern culture at first. They're driving in the car and she's complaining in the back. So she doesn't start out that way, but then when she's put into that element of, I am in a community here, we're all working, everyone here works, even the lady in charge is working, you know, like, that was, I was going to see that development and that work element, whereas this is something he valued and something that you can find joy in. That's what I love too, like, I love the girls in Totoro scrubbing the floor with the biggest smiles on their face ever. Because they're enjoying their work and they're doing something together as a team and helping the family and work, you know, it doesn't have to be something horrible that, who has to do it today? It's not my turn, you know. This can be something that you're part of the team, and this may not be a fun job to do, but we're going to do this together and be a family or be a community. That's really awesome. That's why I love Con, because Con's like that. Everybody's volunteering. I feel like life should be like this all the time. We all just take turns doing the garbage out, you know, doing the dishes, and then you get to go run out and play. All the time. I just won't live at con. You gotta put in work hours and everybody sign up. And you can sign up for, you don't wanna do garbage, fine. And go wash dishes or clean the toilet, you know, just that.
I don't know if I want to eat rice forever though. So I've got lady in the back, gentleman over the left, so that's kind of the order I've got.
You touched on this before too, just like the community that comes together and everything, but it really does feel like a family, you know, is like one of his big themes. And a family is what you make of it. Like it's with these spirits that you come across that you meet. Maybe somebody's kind of grumpy at first,
And
then they
build a family.
Yes.
You don't have one. Like,
Yes.
Like housing places, they all just build a family.
Well, and even with like Totoro too, like they go and they find Totoro, and Totoro and the cat bus help them, so they kind of become part of their family. And just with Princess Mononoke too, it's just like all these spirits and all these characters coming together from different backgrounds and helping each other and working towards the common good.
And taking care of each other. I love Ponyo and that element of this town that are all, and it's a modern town, and you see the downfall of it as well, Rushen, and you know the things that happen when when the natural elements come and then people they're in danger now, but how they band together and help each other, and across the board from the children, you really see the village helping each other element where there's the elderly that are being, everyone's paying attention to each other. It's not everyone for themselves. I really love that aspect too, because we lose that a lot nowadays. It's just me, and then my immediate family, just my kids, and I don't care about anybody else. You feel that a lot with modern culture, particularly Western culture. So
Yeah,
The nursing home workers keep working after the nursing home is encased in a bubble and dropped below the sea. You see them still preparing chairs for the elderly.
Yeah, everyone
Blue
keeps,
towels.
and making sure each other's okay, turning the light on, they want to get back to the light on, the generator, so they can be a beacon for everyone there, because they know that they have something that everyone doesn't have, and that element of, the community, thinking of everyone, not just yourself.
Yeah, but it's also true that in American culture, we are expected to take care of ourselves.
Mhm.
Like to a degree, I don't.
There is a push for that, but you don't have to do that.
No, I know it's true, we don't,
yeah,
but,
you don't,
but
but
the
you know what I mean,
cultural
just that push for
expectation
that,
is
yeah.
the pioneer and the bootstrapper
Yeah.
and that,
I know.
so that we are raised with a very strong drive towards be productive, be self-sufficient, make sure you take care of yourself and don't rely on handouts. And I think you're right, that it's really interesting that we see the other side, we see the other side really brought up and cherished in a non-Western, in a non-Western word, down.
Yeah. An idea of helping, and because there's admirable things about doing things yourself and being self-sufficient. But then there's the downfall of, now I'm too proud to let anybody, now I'm too self-involved to help anyone else. Or even you walk around and people even smile at each other. It's just like, kindness can go a long way in even little things. So you see that a lot in Miyazaki films, and you also see things that are having the devil, like Ponyo and these other ones where we're ruining the environment or if something's happening. But people mean well, and it's interesting to see that, that realism shown in a light that has a depth. I don't know.
I think we have time for the demo.
I was curious if there may be a film that I'm not aware of, or if there might be something in production, or another director, producer that could be working with Studio Ghibli that might be making a film. I'm hesitant to say geared towards an older audience because, but darker, maybe something more akin to the Princess Mononoke. If not the age group or the demographic, just like the color schemes.
Sure.
Have
you seen The Wind Rises when the Wind Spits Out? That's definitely, we were talking about, that's definitely more of an adult concept movie. I haven't seen Whisper from the Heart. Is that one Whisper from the Heart? Is that one as well? No, I haven't seen that one. What was this one? I always use that.
This one is coming out in 2014. It's called When Marnie Was There. It's one that Miyazaki himself has no involvement with. We are seeing, but it's directed by Hiromasa Yonebayashi, who did Secret World of Arietti. And I'm afraid I don't know a lot about it, but I'm definitely interested in it.
Something
It will be,
to look
it's
for.
coming out in Japan in July, so we're not gonna see it for a little while after that. But
I
I
just
would,
noticed we've seen a lot less of that since Disney's creation. Because you know, you guys were saying how they're hesitant about doing something beyond, you know, that has the Disney branding, whether it's, you know.
well, you know, one of the things, I know we're almost out of time, but you know how Grave of the Fireflies was released as a double feature with My Neighbor Totoro? Which is
Oh my I did not know that.
And the thing is, you know, Grave of the Fireflies was obviously very mature and very adult, and My Neighbor Totoro was very different. And Grave of the Fireflies, you know, 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, we all love it, but it was a box office failure. And it was My Neighbor Totoro, which was financially successful, and all the merch, the little cat bus toys and everything, really stabilized the studio. So I think that that may have been a point at which they said, okay, you know what, the kids' stuff is safer, because kids and adults will go see that. Whereas if we do the more adult films, then we're limiting our audience. And I agree that.
I hate to typecast it, but I guess what I'm getting at is like, I just want to know when I'm going to see another Princess, you know, get
Oh, yeah.
taken away.
Yeah.
That one is a very unique one. I mean, you know, I feel like a lot of that is a lot of dark, one of the more dark. Yeah, there's blood in that one. You know, like there's blood in other ones too.
Yeah.
But there's, you know what I mean? Yeah. Have you seen Tale of Birds? Okay, this is in that one.
I'm feeling like Goro might be, I feel like he might take a darker tone with it, which I think might not be a bad thing. I'd like to see a little more of the relatability. I feel like he's still kind of stretching his wings as an artist, but he might be bringing, because the two films that I've seen of his are a little bit more dramatic, and so that may be where we're looking. Anyways, I think we got that.
Yeah, so quick question for Dan.
I was just going to mention one thing you might want to check out is some of Makoto Shinkai's work. His art probably goes a debt to Miyazaki's elaborate, beautiful art, but his work typically involves people growing up and apart. So it's a lot of bittersweet explorations of the distances between people, and it's definitely not a kid's type story. So 5 centimeters per second by Makoto Shinkai, it's worth a rental. Just for the beauty, though.
Thank you very much for everyone being here.